Thank you. All right, so it is 7:01, and I am calling this meeting of the Wakefield Youth Council into order. First, we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now I'm going to take attendance, so I'm going to call the roll. Emily,
Here.
Marcelo. Thomas. Here. Declan.
Here.
Nathaniel is running late. Parker.
Here.
Jonathan. Michaela.
Here.
Nico.
Here.
Ahmed.
Here.
Sophia said she'd be absent. Ellie, Laurel, and Ava also said they'd be absent. Olivia.
Here.
All right. So that's attendance. And then, are there any members of the public wishing to speak today? Seeing none. So today, for this youth council meeting, we're going to open up with a discussion with the director of guidance at the Wakefield Memorial High School, Mr. Robinson. So at our last couple of meetings, we've had some discussions about different ways that we want to work with the guidance department to kind of create more opportunities for the youth council and the guidance department to work together to further some of the awareness that of what like the guidance department does, what it offers. And so, yeah, I'd like to let Mr. Robinson kind of start with it, just anything that he'd like to start with opening, like with kind of just like an opening with what the guidance department does exactly for some of the people that might not know. And then kind of like what the guidance department's kind of plan is with some of this stuff. So yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me. So I guess overall, the guidance department, we do a few key things. Obviously, we help with scheduling, but that's just kind of the very surfacey type of thing that we tend to do is work with schedules and fix that up for the start of the year. Our key roles would be counseling, which I'm not sure students, I think we're in the office, we see them come in every day. But I think as far as ideas of how to promote more, I'm not sure students, I'm going to defer to you, but I'm not sure students technically think of it as an actual counseling type of a place. I guess I want to remind students that would be an option and make sure it's not just that stereotypical go fix my schedule kind of place. And I don't think we're really at that point in the school, but just if you're trying to think of ways to reach out and share what we do, I think that's really important piece. We do have adjustment counselors in the school. But as far as like the protocol goes, we encourage students to go first to their guidance counselor. And then if the guidance counselor feels like it might be another level of services that are needed, then there might be a referral to the adjustment counselor. So I guess that's probably one thing to clarify with students. Yes, we do have adjustment counselors. They're amazing and they help all the students they deal with, but it's not something they just kind of go directly to them. It's just a matter of kind of trying to keep track of who needs what. And so the starting point would be the guidance counselors. And then we meet every 2 weeks. And when I say we, it's the guidance counselors, adjustment counselors, assistant principals, the nurses, school psychologists. So we call it an intervention team. So basically any students that were referred since the last meeting 2 weeks prior, we bring up and talk about as a group to see if other people have interacted with the student, if they have any ideas of what works. But then as a team, we kind of figure out what might be the best plan moving forward. And one of those things that can often come out of those discussions would be to have the student meet with the adjustment counselor, right? So that's just one of the things that could happen. But so just to kind of clarify the process of how that works would be helpful probably for students. And then obviously there are other parts of the guidance team. We do college and career readiness. So we've tried to kind of ramp that up a little bit, whereas instead of just the senior type of services, we're trying to stress to all 4 grades that that's really something they should be thinking about And so we use Naviance, as I'm sure students there know. And so we've kind of adapted a plan where 2 times a year for each grade, we meet with every student. Um, and so, for example, with ninth graders, they'll meet once in the fall and once in the spring. So we may go through the English classes. And so what we'll do is we'll hit all the grade 9 English classes over a course of a week, and the counselors will meet with the students to go over a certain topic. So we could do things like career surveys, we can do resume building, college searches. So the number of different things that we focus on. We know it's tough to get students in front of students, and we know it's hard if students are very busy to just take the time off and work on Naviance surveys and things like that in their free time. So what we try to do is expose as many students as possible to as many key things, and then show you where you can look into things more if you have the desire to and the time to. So that's kind of something we've increased a little bit, I would say, over the past few years. So I think the career, the college, the social emotional piece. I mean, those are some of the key pieces that our department covers. But
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that provided a really thorough explanation of everything that the guidance department does. And I feel like a lot of that stuff showcases how dedicated the guidance department is to what we want to work on. So I want to open it up to the youth council. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Mr. Robinson after that explanation? Yeah, Michaela.
Do we want to talk about like what we're proposing as a council? Or-
Sure. Yeah, do you want to?
Yeah, so what we talked about at our last meeting about how to improve, really what we talked about last meeting was an increased connection with the guidance counselors. So we talked about having more, mandatory meetings with your guidance counselor throughout the year. So it could be once every quarter. And then they would meet one-on-one. I don't know, I'd love to hear your feedback on it. But that's kind of the gist, and that's kind of like what we came up with as a council. We talked about, meeting instead of once a semester, quarterly, and then if possible, meeting individually with your guidance counselor so you can get more connection with them and have more of a relationship with the guidance counselor. So I'd love to hear your feedback on that.
no, I think that would be amazing. And I think if we tallied everything up, I feel like there are some students that come in more regularly than others. But as far as trying to incorporate all students, I think it's super important, because I think if some students had a little bit more knowledge of what they can go for and had that relationship that you just mentioned, they may go there more often naturally, right? If they say, oh, I'm not sure really who my counselor is, or I'm not sure when I would go see. So if that's kind of lingering, then you might not have that relationship develop. So when you said to meet more often one-on-one, I completely agree with that. I think especially the ninth grade year, because I know that when I see freshmen that tend to come down more often, they develop those relationships early, and then throughout the 4 years, that counselor just becomes that go-to adult, a trusted adult that they would go to for anything. Whereas some students, if they didn't really feel like they had a need, and just went in a couple of times, maybe talk about courses for the next year, they may not know that that's a place they can go to. Whereas if you get that relationship early on, I think that's, we don't know when a student will need help, but over the course of 4 years, there's bound to be at least 1 or 2 times, I would think, that they really, really need them. And so if that relationship's built, yes, then that way they can go there comfortably. As far as seeing each other one-on-one, so we do meet, like I said, in small groups, one-on-one. Typically, yes, it is when we meet with course selection. Hopefully the conversation's more than just pick these 4 classes and go. It's time to actually meet with you and kind of get to know you more. I know the seniors definitely meet regularly with the counselors. So I think what the issue always comes up to be is kind of the time, right? And we try to limit the amount of time you get pulled from an academic class. But at the same time, we have services that we can provide that could really help a student um, outside of academic piece, right? Just the teaching and learning piece. So it's that balance is always is the challenge. So I think the best way to do it is to come up with some ideas that students can take advantage of their downtime. So I'm thinking ASCs is the first thing that comes to mind, kind of their study time. That if they met with a counselor during those blocks, you wouldn't be missing the academic piece. And I know I'm wondering the scheduling piece too. Do students know how to set up an appointment? Do they feel comfortable coming up to set an appointment? That's something that pops into my mind that we could maybe clarify or create a system where it's easier to set appointments so both the counselor and the student know um, that it's scheduled and not just kind of dropping in and hope that the counselor may be available or not. But if those appointments are set up, maybe that's a better way to guarantee you'd have that time slot. Um, but yeah, no, I would definitely look forward to trying to work together to see um, how to increase those one-on-one meetings.
Yeah, thank you. I
Thank
think,
you for your feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think students, I guess I'm curious to hear like just things about the guidance kind of just anecdotally, like do you feel like they know why they would come to the counseling department? Do you know of any, I guess just kind of look feedback from you as students, the impressions that you have of the department. And you may not have them right off like this second, but I would be curious to see if there are any trends or just anything that we could do to improve. I mean, I know the team is amazing, so we're um, wide open to suggestions or ways we can do things differently. Um, but if you have anything on the top of your mind now, that'd be great.
I think like kind of circling back to how like many students don't really feel connected to their guidance counselor. I think most students know that they can go to their guidance counselor about stuff, but
Yeah.
they just don't, not that they're not comfortable enough, but they
Mhm.
don't know them in a position where they would share that it's like
Right.
once that connection gets built, then they would be able to, but
Yeah.
it's hard. Like I know you guys are super busy of students in every grade, but like
Yeah.
if that connection can get built, then more students would be coming.
That's a spot on. I mean, that you couldn't say it any better because it really is. It's that the feeling comfortable going there, right? I mean, and that's leading back to the relationship early on in ninth grade. I think the faster you get that relationship going, the better. But it's a good point. Thank you for mentioning that it's I don't know how to say it other than, our team needs to be a team of people that would go to ask anything. And again, I think we're a pretty strong team. It might be just more of that outreach or welcoming this to the students to get in there to develop the relationships. But thank you for that point. I appreciate that.
and something I'd like to add is, I think kind of in like, talking about like, what do students know about the guidance department? Something that I didn't really know until kind of we started this process was about the referral system for the for the school adjustment counselors. I feel like, advertising that in a way that, like the guidance counselor is the initiating point of the referral to that, to the school adjustment counselors. And also I know like other programs like Bridge are also conducted on that referral basis. Am I correct with
Yes.
that?
Yep.
I feel like, if students understand that the guidance counselor is the initiating point for that, because I feel like, a lot of students know about school adjustment counselors and might be interested in reaching out to them, knowing what school adjustment counselors do. But I
Right.
feel like, advertising that as a means of talking with your guidance counselor first to determine if that's the right step. Because I feel like, if students knew that the school adjustment counselors was kind of a secondary step to the guidance counselor, I feel like students might take more advantage of their guidance counselor as a like social emotional counseling component too.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think we've, 5 years ago, we didn't have any adjustment counselors, and we've been fortunate enough to have one start, and then a couple years later, another one, and now we're up to three. So, yes, it's great that we've added these positions, but then it's like that, okay, are we getting out the information like you just mentioned on how that whole process works? And I think we've just been so fortunate to have them increase and just keep going and going that we didn't necessarily stop and pause for a second and explain to everybody, especially the students, how it all works. We're just so happy to have them all, and everybody they
Yeah.
deal with is great. But to clarify that, I've heard that a couple times now, so that is something to definitely address.
Yes, thank you. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add? Okay, so I think going like with next steps to continue with this, to
Yeah.
actually like work on concrete like steps that we can take to kind of help with this process. So I think that we can compile some of those suggestions that we had
Yes.
based on this discussion, and then perhaps we can meet again in the future potentially um to discuss that either in a smaller group or together as a whole again, to see how um kind of like the implementation of these suggestions would be, like the feasibility of that, and also kind of how effective they would be. So
Yeah.
does anyone have
I would,
any comments on that? Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would suggest if we start some type of shared document that you could list things that you're wondering, suggesting, have questions about, anything that could possibly come up. Um, and then I meet with the counselors once a week, usually maybe once a cycle, basically meet with them. Um, and I think it'd be good to share that information with them, obviously, that would make a lot of sense. And then at some point have a meeting with the counselors, at least a couple of counselors in attendance as well. But I think we have that shared document, knowing that the counselors are seeing you, they're seeing what's on your mind, um, will be helpful because when we meet, we can kind of team up and figure out how we can address them. And then we just kind of can share that back and forth, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that that would be a great next step. I think that that would be very effective in kind of detailing that and getting it out there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
If we were to go through implementing, increasing, mandatory meetings with guidance counselors, would that have to go through administration first? So like, would we have to present something to administration and they approve it, or what would it be to get
Yeah.
this approved?
So I think I'm not, as far as like an approval of a mandatory one-on-one meeting X amount of times, I think the key part is to come up with a plan on how we'd achieve that. And then we could share that throughout. I can share with the other administrators in the building as we're coming together with that plan. I'm not, it's more, my suggestion or what it might most likely be will be a guideline with a very strong concrete plan to make it happen. And whether it's listed as a mandatory or a guideline to just make sure it happens. I don't know of too many, we can look into it, but too many schools where it's mandatory, they have to meet. I know lots of schools have their own guidelines. It's okay, our goal is to meet X amount of times or certain amount of times a quarter or semester. So I want to stay strong on the message and the idea and how to get it done. And then maybe we can look and see what steps it would be. I don't know that it would be something we get documented. Does that make sense? I guess what I'm trying to say is um, we can create the plan, advertise that plan, promote it, complete it, actually, and do it. And I think that would be a really good starting point. And then we can kind of maybe start collecting data a little bit. I think that always helps to see is, you know, counselors can easily track how many times they've seen each student. And so that's something that like the end of a given year, we could show out and say, okay, look, we've met with X amount of students, X amount of times, and then kind of just look at that data and see, are we doing what we wanted to in the plan? Something.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, I think that would be the most effective strategy to do this. And also kind of going back to what you said earlier about meetings during like maybe ASC, so that we were not drawing away from academic instruction time and kind of making it.
Sorry.
Oh, no, yeah, I was just gonna say, and then like the part that you said about making it more like structured with how students kind of schedule those meetings with their
Yeah.
guidance counselor, so they know how to schedule an appointment. I think those are like the two great steps that you kind of said earlier.
Yeah. those 2 times that I mentioned that we do Naviance per one in the fall, one in the spring for each grade, we tend to take up, like a core class. For my opinion is that if there's 180 days and there's one block of one class of the entire year that we're trying to talk about, researching your careers you may be interested in for the rest of your life, I think it's worth that. I think if I didn't think that, it wouldn't be saying a lot for our department, right? So I don't mind that, which is why I think it works. If you're just taking out of, you're missing one English class one day of the year, and you're missing one history class in the spring the entire year, grand scheme of things, I think that's a really good way to get this information and let us do what we can. Beyond that, though, there's the teachers. I don't know how they do it. There's always reasons that they're getting kids pulled out for different things. So it's kind of been our agreement that this has gone okay. And then the next part is, okay, if we're going to do this and it's really going to work with one-on-ones this many times, it would have to be some type of like ASC time and more of the logistics. I think that would need to happen.
Yeah.
Someone,
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Robinson, for sharing this information. I had a thought. It sounds like the proposal is really based on how can the support staff have a one-on-one or touch base with the students more frequently. And I just wondered how the youth council felt, if it would be useful at all to also and I think maybe this has happened in the past, but increase the awareness and understanding of the student body about what services are offered by the student
Yes.
support. So that was a piece I think that we mentioned as a need, like what do people actually think that we do? So I didn't know if there were other ideas of things that don't require staff time, but we could get that message out and that information out sort of however, I think in the past, whether it's the youth council, I know the youth action team club has done some pieces around trusted adults. And so I didn't know if that was a possibility or would also help serve the type of need that youth council members were concerned about.
Yeah, I think the conversation we've had tonight has kind of been twofold, right? So we've had the part we just covered with the plan for one-on-one meetings and things like that, but the whole first part of it was all about promoting what we do and making sure the awareness is out there to start that initial relationship in the first place. So to not forget that. So definitely circle back and maybe similar, have a proposal of what your ideas would be, that students would, we can guess all we want what's going to be effective as far as reaching out to you, but if you could help us and have a list of ways that we could promote, and then we can provide obviously all the information that what we do. But I think so it's almost two separate plans, but I think they're both equally important, especially the one about getting awareness out there. So I think that'll just kind of organically happen once students know that, they'll just naturally go more often.
Yeah, and something that came to my mind when we kind of started this too was potentially even using extended homeroom time, because those are already built in to the school calendar, right? So maybe taking up one of those days to overview that, create like that we can work with the guidance department to create some sort of slideshow that would be able to present it to the students. And I feel like that would be effective in kind of detailing all the different components of the guidance department in a simplified way.
I love that. And I think if it's done by students, very concise, but we can get as much information. And I think if we came up with some type of maybe a video to share or something, I love that idea, because it doesn't have to take a lot of time, but you can get a lot of information out there pretty quickly. And that extended homeroom is a time where you pretty much have a captive audience, right, with the whole student body. So I love that idea. In fact, I think the spring we have plans for in the next few months of extended advisory, but we do have a few months in the spring that we're looking for ideas or we're trying to work on. So whether they would take up the whole advisory or not, but even if it was part of something, to start off the extended homeroom with whatever we just talked about, whatever that looks like. I don't see why we couldn't do that at all. That'd be great.
Yeah. What do we think about that? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Great.
Does anyone have any other comments or questions that they'd like to ask Mr. Robinson? All right.
Please keep the
So,
communication going here, though, please.
yes.
I've always said the student run initiatives are always the best. So if you have any ideas, please don't hesitate to ever to reach out to me and the team.
Yeah, so definitely, we're gonna make sure to continue this communication. So we will create that shared doc so that we can start compiling everything that we've discussed, all our suggestions and different things that we'd like to see, so that way you can take that forward and then continue formulating some sort of plan for a potential presentation for extended homeroom. So I think that those are two great next concrete.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah.
All right.
Thank you very much for coming to this meeting. It was very
No problem.
beneficial, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Anytime. Please invite and I'll be there.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Thanks.
All right. So now we will move on to item 6, which is an introduction to the voting age reduction initiative that we discussed at our first meeting. So I have a presentation that I would like to put on the screen. I'm going to see if I can do this right. I think I have to log into the Zoom from my computer, so that way I can share my screen. Should have had this queued up. Let's see. Sorry, everyone. I know. Just loading. Let's try this. Let's see if I can open it in the app. Oh, there we go. That works.
Meeting is being recorded.
Oh, okay. And then I should be able to. Okay. So then I can just have to share screen. All right, there we go. Thank you everyone for waiting. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about the voting age reduction initiative that we discussed at our last meeting. So I've prepared some information to kind of help us guide like the the foundational part of this process. So for background and kind of why we started talking about this. So in the Massachusetts general laws, we all know that the voting age is 18 years old. And so part of that is part of what we do as the youth council is to increase participation and advocacy in the local government. And the actual voting process is one of the most significant parts of this and one of the most effective ways to accomplish this. And in extending the right to vote to 16 and 17-year-old Wakefield residents, that would create more opportunities for our age group to effectively influence local policy, including some of the policies that would directly affect us. And so kind of talking about voting trends too among the younger part of the electorate, which would be ages 18 through 29. As we've moved into the future, as time has gone on, there has been increased interest in civic participation among younger voters. And as this quote kind of says, youth turnout has been on the rise in every presidential election since 1996. And further, with the Massachusetts general laws, and as we've talked about very frequently, the Civic Action Project is a very important part of Wakefield Public Schools education and Massachusetts education in general. And specifically, it specifically states that civic education, public education is done to promote civic service and a greater knowledge thereof, and to prepare students morally and intellectually for the duties of citizenship. And this education goes hand in hand with voting. And for 8th graders who learn this, and then again 11th graders who undertake this this project, it's very significant for them to actually be able to apply this. Yeah, and this is another graph that showcases higher levels of civic participation over time for youth in across the United States. And then at the same time, even though we're seeing an increase in youth voting as a whole, youth voting still lags behind other age groups, behind older adults, middle-aged adults. They're generally less likely to vote. And kind of from that, we would be able to, from promoting more and more youth voting and starting that at a younger age, it could help create more sustainable practices, more concrete practices for youths to more effectively engage in government. And so for specifically what we would be able to undertake in Wakefield. So we would only be able to reduce the voting age to 16 and 17-year-olds, and that would be only be able to work in municipal elections. So those would be like elections to town council, school committee, but it wouldn't apply for state rep elections, governor, president, senate, because those are state and federal elections, and Wakefield has no jurisdiction over those elections. And so specifically to actually accomplish this, what would need to take place is have it part of open town meeting, and the Wakefield voters would have to approve what's called a home rule petition to send to the Massachusetts state legislature. And then the state legislature and the governor would have to vote to approve this home rule petition to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in Wakefield municipal elections. And kind of in the wider context of this issue, other Massachusetts towns have been successful in approving home rule petitions on reducing the voting age to 16 years old, including towns like Acton, Boston, Concord, Northampton, Somerville, and Southborough. However, at the same time, the state hasn't approved any of their home rule petitions. So if they're not approving the petitions, then why is this significant? Because the more towns that would approve home rule petitions, it showcases the wider interest in this issue across Massachusetts, and it would help to press state legislature to either approve those petitions or set aside or create a different framework for allowing younger Massachusetts residents to vote. And so kind of what I'm proposing for us to continue working with on this issue would be to establish a working group of youth council members to conduct more thorough research about the feasibility of reducing the voting age in Wakefield municipal elections, and how we would actually go about that through specifically outlining a plan. And this would also take place through community outreach to gauge youth and adult opinions on this issue and perceptions, and how youth voters would consider even like receiving the right to vote. Would they exercise it? Would they engage differently in the civic process with it? And that would be the general framework. And I know in Massachusetts, even though it hasn't been acted on in Massachusetts, it has been acted on in other states and other cities throughout the country, and it's becoming a more prevalent topic. And I feel like Wakefield would be well served to take more time to research this issue to determine if it's possible for the town to undertake this. So that's what I have to say with my presentation. I want to open it up for any discussion or any thoughts that anyone might have. And you go.
So would you require, like, if this happened, would you need like a driver's license to prove or something, or would it just be like showing your date of birth?
So that would go into actual like voter like laws in Massachusetts. I don't think that like voter ID laws, I don't think that that has any stake in the actual like reduction of the voting age, because those are set by the state, I believe. So that wouldn't change any of that. And I'm not sure the exact certification laws for that. So
If we do plan on reducing it to 16 and 17, which like I support, except we should probably have like a, well, almost like a Wikipedia page about the people running for town council, and like maybe on like the town council site, like about the people who are running, so you don't just blindly choose.
I feel like that's another really significant piece of this. If we're going to reduce the voting age, there should be more education about what we're actually voting for, especially for, and I feel like that would allow for more responsible voting practices going into the future. Instead of just voting for a label or something like that, you're able to make a more educated decision in what you're looking for. Yeah, Michaela?
I mean, we could definitely use like communications and outreach to community could definitely work on that with providing education about, you know, the people running and certain initiatives and stuff like that. We could always, you know, make it something on our social media. And then I also wanted to add, if we were to do like a survey, would that be a communications and outreach thing? Since it's going out to the community, or would that be a separate?
So it kind of depends on how we're going to go with this, and we can kind of discuss that at the end of like the discussion, if we're going to choose to make a working group of this, or if we're going to hand it to communications and outreach. So yeah, so that's a good question.
I mean, I don't mind.
Yeah.
I don't mind taking it on. So if that were to be it, that, you know.
Yeah, Nathaniel?
Yeah, so I was just wondering, I know that there's a constitutional amendment that that has the voting age at 18. Is that just for national and state elections, or so how would this interfere, I guess, with that amendment?
Yeah, so that amendment is specifically for federal elections. So because Massachusetts is kind of interesting in that it's one of the few states that actually does allow home rule from like their municipal governments, which is why they like Wakefield doesn't have like it doesn't have the features of other municipal governments, in that Wakefield is kind of unique and with the other Massachusetts towns in doing the open town meeting, which is kind of why this is able to be possible. But since it does require the state approval, there still is that kind of extra steps to go through. It doesn't just rely on the input of the town. So yeah, but that's a good point to bring up. Yeah, Ahmed.
One thing to add too, we're escalate this and try to gather information and all that. I think it'd probably be to our benefit to try to get some form of data from the youth other than the youth council, whether that be like a quick survey at school or just some other form of getting information. Basically convince others that what we think is a good idea is not only supported, but is actually going to be feasible, and people will actually go if this will change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's important, why the next step for this wouldn't actually be like creating like a plan to enact this, but it would be actually to see if this is right for the town, if this is right for specifically Wakefield, because I feel like making sure that we research this effectively to make sure that we're making a sound decision in this. I feel like that's important to make sure that we're doing this in the most effective manner. So I think, yeah, definitely creating data-driven surveys would be great. Yeah, Olivia?
I do think that getting thoughts, especially on government from the youth in Wakefield is important, but I don't think that lowering the voting age is the way to do that. Especially because that definitely like a large amount of 16, 17-year-olds, even people in their early 20s, just vote with their parents. They don't know. And I don't think many people are going to go out and do the research. Yeah, we can put things out there, put flyers up explaining who everything is, what they are going to do for the town, but I don't think enough people are going to actually sit down and look at that and think about how they would go about it. And it's just going to end up being a representation of each family, honestly. So I don't think that would be the best idea.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to consider, especially when we're doing this, to make sure that we're doing this in a way that's most effective, not just furthering something that might be detrimental for the town. So yeah, and Nico.
I feel like continuing off that point, there could be like a survey in extended homeroom, like for upperclassmen in general, like about like, would you be like how would you vote for this? Would you vote with your parents or something like that? But I feel like that would also be a little too personal to some. But I also feel as if a survey and extended homeroom in general for this at some point around like the end of the year would be helpful for us.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Are there any other questions or comments before we continue? Yeah.
You have a goal to get it onto the town meeting for April, or are you thinking about for next year, or are you just waiting to see what the surveys say and then going from there?
I think that would probably be like the best next step to see how receptive people are to this, and then to determine if it's feasible to put this on in April or put this on in next fall, or even not at all. It just kind of depends on that, to make sure that we're taking it slow, so that we make sure that we do this as thoroughly as possible. But yeah, I think that that's a great point. Yeah.
I feel like most like 16 and 17-year-olds really like wouldn't care to like vote. And like they wouldn't go, like we'd go through all that work to try to get it, and then they wouldn't go out and like vote. So you make sure you need to have like all like the surveys to see if like people would actually vote.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too, to make sure that if we're gonna do this, it would actually be to the benefit of both the electorate and the youth population of the town. And even if we were able to get this on an open town meeting and it were to pass, it would still have to go through the state legislature, and the state legislature has shown that it's not a priority for them. Yeah, so it's not necessarily a priority for them, as we've seen in even much bigger municipalities. They haven't enacted this. So just joining that group of towns that have expressed interest in this is basically more of what this would be, I think. Yeah.
Just wanted to point out too that there's a majority of adults that also don't vote in elections.
Yeah.
So it's not just 16 and 17-year-olds that spans the age groups. So don't feel like that shouldn't be a reason to move forward with this. Our last town election had very, very low turnout. Less than 10%. I'm for sure. It was low.
So just to clarify, Ellie, you're suggesting that the youth council decide tonight whether or not to convene to look further into what the issues are, to explore some of the questions that have been brought up, some of the
Yes.
perceptions, and to kind of do what you did in your presentation, to look for when other states have implemented this, how successful has it been? Have youth actually voted? I'd be curious to know if that affects how long it's been in place, and if it's affected the vote rates of voting of ages as they age, or has it increased their civic engagement? Has that been evaluated? And so, yeah, to just gather what's been done in other places where this has been implemented. Have they seen an increase in voting or civic engagement? Have they not?
Yeah. Yeah,
Anyway,
exactly.
Yeah, so two things, my clarification question, but what you're asking this group, but also if you're asking him about a working group, I would put forth that as some information.
Yeah,
gathering.
absolutely. And to your clarifying point, yes, that's exactly what this is exactly what I'm proposing, just to conduct more research into this to determine how like this has worked in the past in other places and how representative it would be of Wakefield, if we were to conduct more research onto this. So, yeah. Did I see a hand over there before? Yeah.
I was just going to say about the thing about turning the voting age to 17 and 16 is I feel like one of the large part of the reasons as to why older adults don't vote is because they feel like they don't have enough time or like voting, which is why like we see more mail-in voting systems being implemented. And I feel like turning the voting age to 16, 17 could at least start a tradition of younger generations voting, which would most likely roll over as they get older and as they adequately set up their life to withhold this tradition of voting.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. I think that could be one beneficial route of lowering the voting age to actually creating a stronger dynamic of longer, like more sustained voting practice even into your older age. So yeah, definitely. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Okay, so I think what we would need to do now is to, well, vote on if we're going to continue with this as a working group or rolling it into the communications subcommittee. Does anyone have any preferences as to whether we make this a working group or if we make this into a subcommittee? And I think that the only distinction that it would do, I think that it would do essentially the same things. It would just be a different group of people. I think potentially just like it's meant to be a smaller group of people who would be focused on doing the research and preparing like surveys and stuff like that. Does anyone have any preferences?
I would probably prefer like a large group of people because then there's more like thoughts, more opinions
Mhm.
on what should be done.
Or would we rather it just stay in the general council? Or would we like to do that? The only reason I said working group originally was just quorum issues we sometimes have, so it might be harder to convene like to like discuss our research or findings, but it would still definitely be presented to the general council, and the general council is the only like group that would be able to like actually set forward like what like concrete steps that we would take. So what are our thoughts on that?
I feel like this would be more of a communication team issue, as it would be specifically surveys, seeing the general data of how the younger generations would, like 17, 16-year-olds, how would they feel about that right of voting at the time. So,
I mean, considering we don't have any initiatives yet for the communications and outreach subcommittee, I think it's a great opportunity to get, the subcommittee started and yeah.
Okay, yeah. Do we tend to agree with that? Or I can just put it up for a vote, actually. So I motion to have the Communications and Outreach Subcommittee take forward more research and surveying of past examples of and future potential possibilities of, in specifically in Wakefield, reducing the voting age to 16 and 17, but just solely research purposes at this point. Do I have a second?
A second.
I'm gonna call down the roll, so I'm gonna call down our voting members. So Thomas,
yes.
Declan,
Yes.
Nathaniel,
Yes.
Michaela,
Yes.
Ahmed,
Yeah.
Olivia,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
and Jonathan.
Yes.
All right, so that passed unanimously. So the Communications Outreach Subcommittee will take this on in further to start coordinating this research, and then it will take it back to us too as it develops its findings. So yeah, definitely. Before we move on, does anyone else have anything that they'd like to say? All right. So I know it's getting late, so we're gonna try to move on with some of the other stuff that we have to discuss. So we're gonna announce, I think, liaisons now. So do you want to start with that, or?
Sure. Thank you all for everybody who completed their, the form for putting your preferences for liaisons. Mr. Collins and Ali and I tried to make sure everyone got at least one of their choices, as you had all, selected. So, want me to do just the first few, and then you do some? or-
Sure.
So Ali is obviously the liaison to town council because he's chair. Thomas, you will be liaison to the town clerk and the Veterans Advisory Board. Declan, you're the liaison to the BB Library. Nathaniel, you're the liaison to the school committee. And Michaela, obviously your communications and media, so your town department will be Jen McDonald's in communications. which we talked about. And then Ahmed, you are also liaison at the school committee. Okay.
Alright.
You wanna take that?
Okay, yeah. So Sophia will continue in her role as the liaison department liaison. I'm sorry, recreation. I said liaison department. Recreation department liaison. Olivia will continue with police department as her liaison. Emily will have the Economic Development Council as her liaison. Marcelo, we have the Permanent Building Committee as your Permanent Building Committee, yes, as your liaison. Nico, the Commission on Disabilities. Ellie Pritchard, the Environmental Sustainability Committee. Laurel as the Council on Aging. Ava as the Human Rights Commission. Parker as the Board of Health. And Jonathan as Safe Streets and Safe Routes to School. So with that, did we say if we have to vote, or?
Said you'd never voted on it before.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we have to vote to accept our liaisons. Do you know?
It helps in school committee, we don't vote to.
Okay.
accept the liaisons.
Okay, so,
Or assigns them, and that's.
Okay.
all
that's
right.
what we get.
Thanks.
See,
our school committee liaison's already working hard with that. Thank you.
all
Lots
right.
of opinions.
So kind of the next steps for this will be, Liz will send out e-introductions between you and your liaison role, so that way you can get to know them and start attending some of their meetings. And kind of the way that works is kind of the expectation would be to at least go to 1 to 2 meetings that they have, and then come back to us, present what you have like learned about your committee, and then different ways that youth council can collaborate with that committee. And we know that some of these groups do have very long meetings. So the expectation is that you're not gonna sit through the whole meeting, but just enough so that way you can learn about what they're doing, their current topics, and then different ways that the youth council can collaborate. So, yeah. Does anyone have any questions or anything that they'd like to add? So next up is the Snow Angel Shoveling Initiative. Do you wanna, yeah.
So for those of you who aren't or new to the youth council, are familiar, the Snow Angels initiative matches youth volunteers with the senior residents of Wakefield to shovel the seniors point of egress from their home. So usually just the steps or the doorway during after a winter storm, so that should there be an emergency, the emergency medical team can come and have clear access to the home. And already Michaela has helped put out a flyer to recruit youth volunteers. So the youth council will be looking for youth volunteers to sign up. The requirements are you have to be at least 13 years of age. There'll be a waiver for your parent or guardian to sign, And you'll be, the youth who volunteer committing to shoveling that area that I mentioned for every snowstorm where there's over 3 inches of snow. And within reason, I mean, if you're at school, you know, it's within 6 to 8 hours of the storm. And the seniors will also sign up and say, you know, ask to have their doorways shoveled, their steps shoveled. We're hoping, we're gonna recruit until November 15th. Historically, we need more youth volunteers because more seniors sign up than youth. That initiative, so to recruit, is underway. We're working with Michaela, like I said, but Laurel is also the liaison to Council on Aging. So I'll be reaching out to her because she and I will help coordinate that deployment when we do have a snowstorm and we have to deploy the snow angels. Does anybody have any questions about it?
I don't know how many people have signed up so far.
How many youth have signed up? No, I don't know that. But last I checked, it wasn't very good.
I know one thing, this could be wrong, but National Honor Society normally has like a volunteer, okay, yeah, requirement. Yeah.
Yes, I saw
Advertising to
Leahy,
them, yeah.
last week, and I did mention it.
Could,
Check the sign up.
I'm actually I'm vice president for NHS, so we can definitely, you know, coordinate something of sharing, you know, that volunteer opportunity.
I think it's 1 hour of service.
Okay.
Per storm, because usually it's matched with one place, but if it's 1 to 2, then maybe it's 2 hours.
Yeah, I think that would be great to have more volunteers using NHS. We can
Yeah.
also have it put on the morning announcements, so that people brought aware of it, putting up flyers too. I think that we can make a digital flyer to go around the kiosks around town, like those at the library too.
Does high school still have a service hour requirement like they used to?
You know,
I know some of the local churches during confirmation and bar and butts and mitzvahs also require service projects and service hours, so it might be worth reaching out to the religious community as well.
So would that be appropriate for Laurel to work with you, Michaela, on that outreach and with
For
Jen McDonald? Because Jen often, she's great at making the town branded volunteer opportunity. And then if she creates that, then we can put it all on the kiosks and on the the digital boards and all of that too.
For sure.
Okay. Great, thank you.
is there any other discussion on this? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the media release forms.
That's me too. So thank you to those of you who sent in their media release forms. Since you have done that, not very many of you have. The town is asking us to use DocuSign instead for all permission forms. So that's why Ali and I have been asking you for your parent or guardian's email address, because we need that information, and Sherry will automatically create a DocuSign email and send it to you and your parents so they can sign those permission forms that way. So I've asked Michaela not to post any photos of all of us until we have all that completed. So be on the lookout. If you have not yet sent me your parent or guardian's contact information, please do so soon after this meeting. We'll get that together.
Yes, yeah. I think, yeah, so is there any other, does anyone have any questions? Yes.
So I have to leave in a couple of minutes, but I wanted to find out if you found another 8th grader from Galvin, if you're still looking for someone.
That was going to be our next agenda item. Yeah, so perfect timing. So communications outreach subcommittee updates. Has advertising started for that middle school seat? Was it sent out?
It was not sent out yet, but I will post about it. I will do it tonight. Also other updates regarding Meet the Members. I sent out a Google form through email for you guys to fill out. It's just for our Meet the Members post on Instagram, like we talked in Facebook, like we talked about last meeting. So what it is that you basically like share information about yourself, so that the community can get to know you better, especially youth, so that they have, someone to go to if they have any initiatives or questions about the youth council. So I've gotten only a few, so majority of you have not filled it out. So please try to fill it out as soon as possible, because we are, I do plan, once the media release forms are all signed, I do plan to start posting them. So please, fill those out as quickly, as soon as possible. And if you have any questions, let me know. If the form, was not sent to you, I can always resend it. So if you have any questions, you can just talk to me after, reach out to me through email.
Yeah, definitely. And we can also do for the middle school seat that's vacant, we can also send it, we can also work with the Galvin to have it sent out over the announcements too. I think.
I can put up any flyers as well if you need me to.
Yeah, I can send it. Yeah.
So that's it for communications and outreach. What we had next on the agenda was if you have any announcements from the school committee that you'd like to share.
I really don't, that we're working on the budget. We have a tri-board meeting on Monday, so if anyone's interested in hearing presentations on the budget from the FinCom and Financial Committee, from town councilors and from the school committee, that's next Monday night at the 28th at 7 o'clock. It is only via Zoom, so if anyone's interested, let me know and I'll get you guys the Zoom link. Other than that, we're moving forward and putting in a bench out in front of Bev Alswitz's classroom at the Galvin in memory of Joey Boudreau. I don't know if any of you guys remember Joey, but he passed last year. So Bev has asked us to approve a bench in his memory outside the classroom. And yeah, that's the bulk of what we're working on right now.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's great. Definitely. With that, I think that's important. Yes. So next on our agenda, we have the approval of the September 4th meeting minutes. Thomas, do you want to give a brief overview?
Yeah, I'll try not to be too long. So our last meeting was mainly focused on opening and organizational stuff. We sort of introduced ourselves. We elected the chair, vice chair, clerk, and communications and outreach subcommittee chair. And then we were introduced to our town council and school committee, new town council and school committee liaisons. We learned of the liaison positions that we just received. We talked about some of our previous initiatives like the bike valet, the Veterans Day cleanup, the outreach, financial literacy, several of the prominent aspects of last year's term. We talked about going forward, approved some previous meeting minutes, and that was about it.
Yeah, thank you. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes? Do
Motion.
I have a second?
A second.
I'm gonna call down the roll. Myself, yes. Thomas?
Yes.
Declan?
Yes.
Nathaniel?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
Ahmed?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Olivia?
Yes.
Did I miss anyone? I was like skipping back and forth between my attendance sheets. Did I miss anyone? I don't think, are you a voting member? I'm sorry. Okay. And then next we're going to do future meeting scheduling. Okay. So I know we kind of ran into some problems with like the meeting scheduling when we had originally planned it earlier in the month. Do we think that the when to meet worked well? Was it easy for us to use?
Mhm.
Okay, so we would prefer to continue using that going forward. Okay. All right. Yeah, so I think that our next meeting, would be November. So we will send out a when to meet for that meeting date. And then we will have it scheduled for us for then. Does anyone have anything else that they'd like us to discuss before we end the meeting? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Myself, yes. Thomas?
Yes.
Declan?
Yes.
Nathaniel?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
Ahmed?
Yes.
Olivia?
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Jonathan.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
It's not answered.